Welcome to the Historian Translated. Please like and subscribe. Without further ado, let's begin. Guys, welcome back to the Historian Translates. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I am going to go through and show you all something that I worked on recently. It was an investigation analysis utilizing 3 different methods that intelligence agencies in the United States do. And the topic was the potential for civil unrest in Ireland. Now, my statement of synthesis was that Ireland is changing fast because of immigration. Obviously, I couldn't be that clear because this is what I presented to my boss. I couldn't be as clear as how I truly feel. But anyway, housing shortages are rampant in Ireland. What was once a booming economy, there's now no new jobs being created because of this mass immigration. And I'm going to show you all some graphs. I'm going to analyze crime in the country. You're going to see when the immigration spiked and when crime spiked. And you're going to see why the Irish people are so mad about this. Just over the last weekend, reportedly, I've seen different reports, but supposedly over 100,000 Irishmen came to Dublin city centre to protest the mass immigration and the politicians selling their country out. It's clear that political unrest is rising in this country, and I predicted that my whole point of this was that by August we're going to see it reach a bit of a boiling point. So, background for those of you who don't know, Ireland has not been in a war since the 1920s, unless you consider their participation in other wars, but with themselves, no war. However, Northern Ireland did have the time of Troubles, which ended in 1998. This was when the Catholics and the Protestants had their bloodbath, and it dealt with the ideal of reunifying Ireland or joining the UK. And obviously, they're still a part of the UK. They do share a landmass, though. It's very easy. Just last year, I drove right through this landmass to go visit the I forget what it's called, but the stones up here in Northern Ireland, really famous ones. Giant's Causeway, that's what it's called. Sorry, I've drawn a blank. Anyway, let me get into my key judgments. So I said public anger about immigration has become mainstream thanks to websites like X, Instagram, TikTok. It's very visible. People can just pop up their phone and take videos of immigrants causing trouble. Conor McGregor visited the White House on St. Patrick's Day and raised this concern internationally, despite how you may feel about Donald Trump. How I may feel about Donald Trump, it was really cool that he allowed Conor McGregor to do that. So the early signs of civil unrest are active, and violence is likely to worsen. So we have already seen Irish people burn down cultural centers for the Middle Eastern and African countries. An Islam cultural center has been ruled to close until further notice in Dublin. So the civil unrest is already here. My prediction was basically just that it's going to worsen. I'm going to show you in my methods in a minute that they have much more reason to get stronger than they do to reduce the civil unrest. I said social media spreads fear, making tensions worse, which is true, but that doesn't really show the true story. Social media exposes the truth, which in turn incites rational fear from the Irish people, which makes tensions, if you want to call them tensions, worse. No, it just exposes the government for selling out their country to immigrants. And not immigrants from, I'll show you all in a minute, but this is not all immigrants. It's broken down by category. And I'm going to show you all the graphs in just a minute. And I also wanted to say 5 to 8% of the Irish population is estimated to possess a firearm. This is not like the United States, where we have the potential for an actual revolution. It's a very small amount of the population. But the Gardaí are mostly unarmed, which the Gardaí are the Irish police. And this just shows that the Irish population, if they're far, they feel a conviction in them, there is the potential for we could see mass shootings and such. So it's not impossible like it may be in other countries that have zero firearms whatsoever. All right, so this is what I wanted you guys to see. Not the graphs yet. The graphs are great, but 141,000 immigrants arrived just in 2023 alone. Uh, since then, Ireland has begun to implement immigration regulations stricter than any other EU country, but it's too late because 20% of the population is foreign born. Now, the Irish do tolerate European immigrants, and I'm going to show you this with several studies that were done. They initially were very accepting of the Ukrainian cause, and they accept Polish immigrants and immigrants from the UK and Northern Ireland are accepted more than any other type, which makes sense because they're genetically closer to them or genetically exactly the same in the case of actual Northern Irish or Irish people who live in the UK. So they're just returning home. It makes sense. But additionally, European immigrants are accepted because they have a similar way of life. They respect Christian values, and many of them come from Christian nations and they don't cause trouble in public. Now, they do not tolerate African, Indian, or Middle Eastern immigration very well. In the polls, it showed that in every poll, I looked at four different ones from different sources, that over 55% and upwards of 70% actually of Irish people say immigration is too high, it's poorly handled. And initially, the polls showed that this was not the case, how they felt about the Ukrainians, but because of the housing crisis and inflation, now the Irish people are becoming a bit resentful of the Ukrainian cause, especially when Ukrainians were some of the most likely people to return home on vacation or for holiday. And why would you return back to a supposed war zone? Additionally, a lot of them come with some type of perceived wealth. So I mentioned the arson that we have seen and violence that has already been shown against like Islamic cultural centers and Middle Eastern and African cultural centers. All right. So this is a graph that I created utilizing ChatGPT with imported statistics from the Irish website. These are the crime statistics. Dublin and Ireland were considered to be one of the safest cities in the world. And I'm going to show you a breakdown in the safest country in the world. I'm going to show you a breakdown of the types of crimes. You see here 205,000 crimes in the whole country in 2019. This includes like petty theft and stuff like that. And also like disorderly conduct for drinking in public. I'm going to show you that in a minute. 2020 it hits a low, which isn't that low still, but it hits a low because of COVID. Now you see 2021 rises back up, up, and up. And the same was for 2024 and 2025, but the statistics haven't been fully released for 25, so it wouldn't show quite the same on the graph, but it's at an exponential spike right now. And this is when immigration came as well. You'll see in a minute. Anyway, these are the types of crime. So public disorder and drug offenses, we aren't going to look too heavily at, nor at other. What you're going to look at is like violent crime, assault, burglary, and theft. Look how many they are as of 2023. Yeah, kind of mind blowing. This is the four different polls that I used from four different websites. This is the Red Sea research. So the yellow, oh, apologies. So the yellow here is the percentage of Irish people who agree that immigration is bad or they're concerned about immigration. You see here it is above 55% in every single study. This one on the right here was on the Ukrainians. This was not the initial case. This same website, the Irish Times, did a uh, a poll in 2021. It was really low. It showed that most people were supportive of the Ukrainian cause, but because of economic problems, that is now not the case. It's from Ireland Thinks, and all these are recent. None of these are old. All these are recent. What this means here, though, is that over 55% of the Irish population, no matter what you look at it, think or agree that immigration is a problem. So we don't know the impact of online quote unquote disinformation. I'm not going to go too into this because that's not a point of this video, but I did want to point out that the Irish government does something that Germany does not. The Irish government safeguards and refuses to release demographics for who commits the crimes. So you can't look up how many, I don't know, asylum seekers commit crimes in comparison to Irish citizens. They don't release that information. And I would venture to say that they probably don't even record that information. And that is the government's way of trying to make it seem that these crimes are committed by regular Irish citizens. When you look at the cases in Sweden and Germany, the UK and France, and different parts, Italy, all these countries in Europe, you will know through a comparative common sense analysis that it is quote unquote asylum seekers, often young, male, able bodied asylum seekers. Here's the picture of Trump and Conor McGregor. So I predicted that protests are going to grow larger. We're probably going to see more arson, burning down, and attacks on things that are ran by African, Indian, and Middle Eastern migrants. Beyond August, we're going to see these political divisions are going to get worse, and I don't predict the Irish government will do anything about this. I also don't predict Conor McGregor will get a bid for presidency because, unlike the United States, you can't just openly declare. He has to actually be endorsed by like 20 different government people in order to run. He may, though, run for the mayor of Dublin. This would be the best case for Ireland. I think that the EU and US are going to kind of exacerbate the cause. We're going to rally to the ethnic Irish's cause because immigration is such a problem. Here was one of my methods that I use, the ACH method, and it just shows that things are more likely to worsen than they will stay localized. And then the policy recommendations are speed up housing projects, monitor extremist groups, adjust immigration policy. And that is what the government